He had the jawline of a Greek statue, a voice like thunder, and the kind of presence that stopped people in their tracks. Jeff Chandler was more than just a leading man. He was a symbol of post-war Hollywood masculinity. Women adored him. Studios banked on him. But behind the silver screen glamour, there was something far more fragile. Something Chandler spent his entire life trying to hide. And in the end, it may have cost him everything. When Jeff first hit the big screen, he seemed untouchable. Rugged yet refined, with a trademark silvery hair that made him instantly recognizable. He was quickly cast in roles that made him a household name. His portrayal of Cochise in Broken Arrow didn't just earn him an Oscar nomination, it cemented his place as one of Universal Studios' top-tier stars. He was a go-to guy for noble warriors, strong fathers, and misunderstood loners. But that stoic exterior? It was just armor. Beneath it lived a man desperate to escape the very persona Hollywood had forced him to become. As Chandler's career skyrocketed, so did the pressure. He was typecast again and again, exotic roles, ethnic caricatures, torture heroes, and the box office kept demanding more. But Jeff wasn't just playing those characters. He was being devoured by them. Friends would later say he never quite seemed comfortable with fame. He rarely smiled when the cameras weren't rolling. And when he did, it never reached his eyes. Then came the whispers. At first, they were just that. Rumors muttered on backlots and in smoky LA lounges. Some said Jeff was too intense, too controlled, too private. Others claimed there were things about his personal life that didn't add up. A ladies' man on paper, yet oddly distant. He dated high-profile stars, sure, but his relationships always ended in mystery. Even his much-publicized affair with Olympic swimmer-turned-actress Esther Williams would end in tabloid fire, with Williams later revealing details that left fans stunned. But the real unraveling began with a simple accident, a back injury on the set of a war movie. Nothing serious at first glance. But what happened in that hospital room would haunt Hollywood for decades. His sudden death at just 42 years old sent shockwaves through the industry. But the official story never satisfied those who knew him best. Because by then, the rumors weren't whispers anymore. They were full-blown stories about botched surgeries, secret settlements, and truths that powerful people wanted buried. And just when the noise seemed to fade, decades later, new voices had begun to speak. Allegations, journal entries, interviews long ignored, and with them, a startling possibility. That Jeff Chandler didn't just die young. He was silenced. But the truth refuses to stay buried. And what's coming next might just change everything you thought you knew about one of Hollywood's most mysterious stars. Long before the spotlight, before the fame and magazine covers, Jeff Chandler was just Ira Grossel, a Brooklyn-born kid with a dream too big for the streets he grew up on. He didn't look like a future Hollywood icon back then. Tall, lanky, and constantly scribbling ideas in the back of class notebooks. He seemed more like a kid chasing fantasies than a man destined for the big screen. But that hunger, that raw ambition, it never left him. Jeff served his time in the Army during World War II, just like many of his generation. But while others returned to quiet lives, Chandler had no intention of fading into the background. He launched into radio, a space where his voice, deep and commanding, could make an impression before his face ever did. And that voice, it worked. He became a familiar sound on shows like Our Miss Brooks and Rogues Gallery, crafting characters that felt larger than life, even to the static of old speakers. But Chandler wasn't satisfied. Radio wasn't the end goal. It was just the waiting room. Hollywood finally came calling in the late 1940s, and Chandler answered like a man with something to prove. It didn't take long. By 1950, he landed the role of a lifetime, Cochise in Broken Arrow, a Native American leader portrayed not as a villain, but as a noble, intelligent negotiator. In an era of one-dimensional stereotypes, it was a groundbreaking role, and Chandler owned it. The film was a hit. Critics were stunned, and the Academy took notice. He was nominated for an Oscar, practically overnight. Chandler went from unknown to in demand. Studios lined up to sign him, and Universal snagged him fast, molding him into one of their top box office draws. Over the next decade, Chandler headlined dozens of films, westerns, war stories, epics, and carved out a niche as a noble outsider, the heroic loner who carried secrets and sorrows behind steel gray eyes. But behind the scenes, that same image came at a cost. Hollywood liked its stars to play along, to smile, nod, and keep quiet. Chandler? He was polite, but he wasn't passive. He pushed back on bad scripts, fought for better roles, questioned the racial stereotyping baked into his parts. And the studios didn't like that. They wanted the image, not the man. Worse, Chandler felt trapped. "They never let me do anything but be gray-haired and noble," he once said. "Universal borrowed me for a romantic lead once, and I was a flop." That bitterness? It wasn't about fame. It was about the box Hollywood had built around him. He wasn't allowed to evolve. He was a product now, a face they sold, a paycheck generator. And yet, despite the growing tension, Chandler kept going. He delivered hit after hit, carrying the burden like a true pro. But even then, at the height of his success, he couldn't escape the feeling that he was acting off-screen just as much as on it. But what would finally break him wasn't the spotlight. It was what waited in the shadows. Success is a double-edged sword, and for Jeff Chandler, the shine of stardom often masked a growing weariness. Fans saw the confident leading man, but few realized just how heavy the weight on his shoulders truly was. Hollywood had given him fame and fortune, yes, but it had also demanded something much darker: his peace, his privacy, even pieces of his very self. Behind closed doors, Chandler struggled. He was known for being intensely private, but whispers circulated that beneath his polished image was a man drained to the bone. Those closest to him described a relentless work ethic that bordered on self-destruction. Film after film, role after role, he pushed himself beyond exhaustion, often returning from grueling shoots with barely a moment to breathe. He once confided that the constant pressure to maintain his noble image wore him down. There were nights he couldn't sleep, plagued by thoughts of what his career had become, a carefully controlled mask rather than a genuine expression of himself. "They don't want the real me," he said quietly in a rare interview. Just the perfect version. And it wasn't just the studios. Hollywood gossip columns and tabloid rumors chipped away at his sense of control. Every whispered scandal, every half-truth, chipped away at his reputation. Jeff was a man caught between two worlds: the demanding, merciless machine of Tinseltown, and the fragile, vulnerable human behind it all. Friends also noted the toll that his personal life took. His marriage to actress Marjorie Hochschild was a roller coaster of passion and tension, and his much-publicized affair with Esther Williams only added fuel to the fire, painting a picture of a man who was both desired and deeply lonely. The tabloids loved to portray him as a womanizer, but those who knew him said he was searching for something real, something Hollywood rarely allowed. As if that wasn't enough, Chandler bore the physical scars of his early life and career. A serious car accident before his rise left him with injuries that never fully healed. Chronic pain accompanied him on sets and in quiet moments, adding another layer of struggle few ever saw. All this pressure built quietly, like a storm brewing beneath the surface. And yet, Chandler kept moving forward, delivering performances that dazzled audiences while his own spirit slowly frayed. The relentless grind, the weight of expectation, and the sense of isolation created a cocktail of exhaustion few stars ever spoke about. It's easy to assume Hollywood glamour means endless parties and effortless charm. But for Jeff Chandler, the reality was starkly different. Fame brought spotlight, but it also brought shadows. And those shadows grew darker with each passing year. But that wasn't the whole story. Because while fans admired his on-screen courage, few knew about the swirling rumors and secrets that followed him off-camera. Secrets that threatened to unravel everything he had worked for. What happened next? The scandals and mysteries that Hollywood desperately tried to bury. Jeff Chandler's name was everywhere in the 50s, on posters, magazine covers, and gossip columns. But behind the glossy headlines, a different story was taking shape. One full of whispered secrets, explosive rumors, and relationships that Hollywood desperately tried to keep under wraps. His most talked about romance was with Esther Williams, the Olympic swimmer turned movie star. Their affair ignited a media frenzy, fueled by tabloid speculation and Hollywood's obsession with scandal. But while the public saw a glamorous love story, insiders knew it was complicated. Williams later revealed that their relationship was intense but fraught with challenges. Secrets kept, moments stolen between tight schedules, and a passion that couldn't easily survive the spotlight's glare. Yet, that was just the beginning. Another rumor circulated quietly in Hollywood circles. Jeff Chandler's supposed cross-dressing. Confidential magazine, notorious for exposing the hidden lives of stars, claimed that Chandler sometimes dressed in women's clothing behind closed doors. Friends and colleagues publicly denied it, but the rumor never fully died. Jane Russell, a close friend, insisted it was false, calling Chandler a true gentleman who kept his private life private. But the speculation kept fueling gossip mills. Why did such rumors spread? Partly because Chandler was intensely private, rarely sharing much about his personal life. Hollywood loves mystery, and in the absence of facts, imagination fills the gaps, sometimes wildly. But beneath the whispers lay a deeper tension, the struggle of a man trying to fit into a box that never quite fit him. His divorce from Marjorie Haschel added more fuel to the fire. While official statements cited irreconcilable differences, rumors of jealousy, secret relationships, and hidden pressures swirled just beneath the surface. Hollywood tabloids hinted at a man living two lives, one on the screen and one shadowed by secrets. And then there were the legal troubles. Not criminal accusations, but lawsuits and disputes, some of which never made headlines. These behind-the-scenes battles revealed a man fighting for control of his career and his image. It wasn't the typical starlet scandal, but exposed cracks in the polished surface. All these elements painted a portrait of Chandler that was far from the flawless hero he portrayed on screen. He was a man haunted by rumors, fighting to protect his reputation while wrestling with his own identity. And Hollywood's system of silence and control only made the situation worse. But despite the gossip and scandals, the truth remained elusive. Many questions stayed unanswered. What was Jeff really like behind the camera? Who were the people he trusted? And how much did the studio system know and cover up? The story was far from over, because soon something tragic would happen, something that would shock Hollywood and change everything. Jeff Chandler's career was full of action, danger, and heroism, both on screen and unknowingly off it. But in 1961, what began as a routine day on set turned into a nightmare that no one saw coming. During the filming of The Man from the Alamo, Chandler suffered a serious back injury. It seemed like just another occupational hazard of an actor known for doing many of his own stunts. But that injury would spiral into something far worse. Pain that was supposed to be manageable turned relentless. What followed was a desperate search for relief, hospital visits, treatments, and finally, surgery. The operation itself was rushed and fraught with complications. Reports say that during the procedure, Chandler began a hemorrhage internally. Blood infection set in, a deadly risk that was unfortunately too common in the era before modern antibiotics and sterile procedures became standard. His condition worsened quickly. Shock rippled through Hollywood as news spread. Jeff Chandler, only 42 years old, had passed away suddenly. Friends, fans, and co-stars were stunned. How could a man at the peak of his career be taken so abruptly? But beneath the official narrative, rumors swirled. Whispers of medical malpractice began to surface. Friends and family suggested the surgery was botched, that mistakes had been made that should have been prevented. Some claimed that pressure from studios to keep filming led to rushed medical decisions. There were stories of a hush-money settlement, an agreement meant to silence those who wanted answers. The details were murky, but one thing was clear. Jeff Chandler's death wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a collapse of a man already worn down by years of strain, secrecy, and relentless demands. Even now, decades later, questions remain. Did the studios really do everything to save him? Or was his fate sealed by a system that valued profits over people? And what secrets might his sudden death have been meant to protect? His passing left a hole not just in Hollywood, but in the lives of those who loved him. Yet, even as the grief settled, new whispers began to creep out about hidden relationships, about people who might have benefited from his silence, about truths that might never see the light of day. Jeff Chandler's story didn't end with his death. It was just the beginning of a darker chapter. Years after Jeff Chandler's sudden passing, a new wave of whispers have begun to surface. Rumors that some powerful people in Hollywood hoped would stay buried forever. The silence that once surrounded his death is cracking, and what's emerging is nothing short of shocking. In recent interviews and uncovered documents, friends and insiders have hinted at a hidden side of Chandler's life that few ever saw. There are claims that Jeff struggled not just with physical pain, but with emotional battles that Hollywood's glossy facade never acknowledged. Some say he was caught in a web of control. Studio executives who demanded loyalty, secrecy, and silence, even at the cost of his well-being. More explosive are the allegations that Chandler may have been involved in conflicts with certain studio heads who didn't appreciate his pushback against their control. Industry insiders whisper about disputes that went beyond contracts, about personal vendettas and threats that made the star's life increasingly dangerous. There are also unverified stories that Jeff kept journals, private writings that hinted at fears, regrets, and knowledge of Hollywood's darker dealings. What happened to those journals? Some say they disappeared after his death, taken by those who want to control the narrative. Then there's a persistent rumor about a mysterious settlement, money exchange and hush agreements that kept damaging details out of the public eye. Who benefited from this silence? And what truths were traded for cash? Fans have speculated for years about Chandler's private life, but new claims suggest that some of those old rumors about his identity and lifestyle were not just gossip, but carefully suppressed realities. Hollywood's refusal to acknowledge these stories reflects an industry more interested in protecting its image than its people. Despite all this, Chandler's legacy has remained surprisingly strong. His films continue to captivate audiences, and new generations discover the man behind the myth. But the growing number of voices challenging the sanitized version of his life is impossible to ignore. The question now isn't just who Jeff Chandler was on screen, but who he really was, and how much of that truth Hollywood's machine tried to erase. What these emerging rumors reveal could rewrite the history of one of Hollywood's most enigmatic stars, and force the industry to confront uncomfortable truths about fame, control, and silence. But there's one final chapter to the story, one that brings everything into sharp focus, revealing what Jeff Chandler's life and death really mean for Hollywood today. Jeff Chandler's story isn't just about fame, scandals, or a tragic end. It's a reflection of Hollywood itself, a glittering machine that creates icons while often ignoring the human cost behind the scenes. For all his on-screen heroism, Chandler's real battle was far more complex, revealing the challenges many stars face in an era of rigid control and relentless pressure. Today, Chandler's films remain a testament to his talent, a man who brought depth and dignity to roles that could have been one-dimensional. His portrayal of characters like Cochise broke ground, offering a glimpse of a more nuanced Hollywood at a time when stereotypes ruled. And while the rumors and controversies continue to swirl, they only add layers to a life lived in the shadows of fame. His death at 42 remains a haunting reminder of what happens when the star's humanity is overlooked. The whispers of cover-ups and silence speak to a culture that often prioritizes image over truth. But in recent years, voices have risen to challenge that culture, calling for transparency, empathy, and a reckoning with the past. Jeff Chandler's story forces us to ask, how many other stars suffered quietly, their struggles hidden beneath Hollywood's shining surface? How many truths remain locked away, waiting for someone brave enough to tell them? In the end, Chandler was more than just a movie star. He was a man caught between two worlds, striving for authenticity in a world built on illusion. His legacy is a cautionary tale, but also a call to remember the people behind the fame. As you watch his films or hear his name, remember the man who broke barriers, faced rumors, and fought for control over his life and career. His story is unfinished, Not because we lack facts, but because the real meaning lies in the questions he leaves behind. What will Hollywood learn from Jeff Chandler's story? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear. The truth always finds a way to emerge, no matter how deep the secrets run.